In this video I would like to talk about a thing which is rather obvious, but is it really? Is Cyberpunk 2077 really Cyberpunk? Does the game follow established tropes, and how does it differ? To find out answer, at first we have to look into what being Cyberpunk actually means. Then we can compare this to the game. According to Wikipedia, Cyberpunk genre originated in 60s and 70s, a sci-fi subgenre in books and comics. The earliest prominent work in cyberpunk I know personally is the book The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. This book was written in 1968 by Philip K. Dick, but you probably know the movie Blade Runner much better. The Blade Runner is equalization of this book and one of the biggest influences in cyberpunk genre. The other famous influences are novel Neuromancer by William Gibson, and in Japan it is manga series and anime Akira. Of course there are many more, but I know these personally and there is no point of counting them all. So the question is, what's similar here and how does cyberpunk differs from just science fiction? The first thing that is very obvious is cyberpunk is always dystopia. Cyberpunk tries to alert us of the dangers of fast technological progress. It shows the worst outcomes possible. This goes hand in hand with the theme that protagonists usually are simple people from the masses. They are the most vulnerable and feel the weight of future society the most. Dangers of future tend to be these: threat of artificial intelligence, crumble of future economy, war, evil corporations ruling over the society, corrupt governments, drugs, fusion of human body and computer, dangers of virtual world. Also, cyberpunk tries to explore near future, so you can imagine all these things pretty easily. I would like to note things that cyberpunk is not. This way it's easier to differ it from simple sci-fi. Cyberpunk doesn't delve into far future. It is not about space exploration. Although there can be space travels included, this is not the main theme. Cyberpunk is not really about technology itself, but about its influence on society. Aliens are not main theme of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is not space opera about wars and political struggles of leaders. It views these things more from a soldier perspective. It is definitely not about superheroes. Let's talk about the aesthetics of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk tends to happen in future megacities. It usually utilizes nighttime and dark colors, especially blue and black. There are lots of neon lights which embellish the night. An interesting theme occurs of super high-tech stuff, but it has design choices of the past. In nowadays cyberpunk, these themes usually are from 80s. Cyberpunk likes to equip people with some crazy prosthetics. In cyberpunk, people usually want to show off their robotic parts rather than hide them. They are not trying to manufacture them similar to real body parts. In my opinion, cyberpunk doesn't want to show a realistic future. It wants to show us all the bad ends. This way it loses an accurate depiction of the future, but gains influence of nowadays society. I think that the influence of the nowadays society is more important than accurate depiction of the future. There I have to note that cyberpunk directly changes the future because people are afraid of the future now, and this way are trying to fix it. This is the most important part of the cyberpunk, and why I love it so much. There is also a simple term how to describe cyberpunk in one sentence. It is high-tech, low-life. You can find this term all over the internet. Although it is oversimplified, at the same time the term is precise. Now let's talk about the game. Cyberpunk 2077 is happening in the Night City in year 2077. This automatically checks two important tropes of cyberpunk: near future and setting of a mega city. You can play as corporate worker, street gang member or vagabond from the desert. All of these characters are not of the top of the society here. The most suitable for cyberpunk is the street gang member. He or she is born in the streets of Night City and is rather low on the hierarchy of this society. The corporate worker may not be so obvious choice, but cyberpunk is a genre which loves to explore evil corporations, so this is also a good fit. The Desert Vagabond is the most unlikely Cyberpunk character. Further, our character wants to climb the ladder of criminal authority and to become rich. This way we get into big trouble by accepting some shady job which pays very well. Then a mysterious implant gets installed into V's brain and our character now have a personality of a man from the past, living inside V's brain. This is life-threatening because their personalities now want to fuse together, creating a situation where death is inevitable. Together they go on a quest against the corporation which created this implant to find out how and if we can survive. This is basically the main plot of the game. So is this plot cyberpunk? In my opinion it is. It explores the typical cyberpunk tropes of human and computer fusion, virtual worlds and evil corporation ruling over the world. You see, Johnny, who is the personality living inside the implant in V's head, was uploaded in there in the past. He does not exist in this world physically anymore, but is still alive. This is like the perfect representation of uploading consciousness inside computer. The company which created it also has tremendous power and influence in this game world. At this point we can already see that the game is definitely cyberpunk, but there is so much more to explore. Let's talk about the night city itself. The first thing you notice are the abundance of neon ads everywhere and the big buildings outside. This is typical cyberpunk atmosphere. There are high-tech cars on the streets, but their design has frozen in time. They look like from the 80s. There are many run-down districts and a lot of abandoned stuff. This tells about collapse of economy and all-around low standard of living. All of this is according to cyberpunk as genre. If you go out of the city, there is a lot of trash scattered around. On the radio they talk about some species of animals going extinct. This screams about the environmental problems we face today. And if we don't do something now, the bleak future of Cyberpunk 2077 is what we will end up with. It seems that in Cyberpunk game, corporations have absolute power, because they own their own personal armies now. They also have all the money, so if someone opposes them, they can either bribe opposer or get rid of them. This delves further into conspiracy theme, because this causes a lot of lies and information hiding. This is also a very popular cyberpunk trope. There is a lot of body modification possible in Cyberpunk 2077. You can buy many different prosthetics to enhance the character. This is rather important because it is much easier to survive in Night City with these rather than without them. This may change the look of the character. For example, you can hide gorilla arms. There are also some rather extreme modifications of eyes possible. As we discussed earlier, this again is cyberpunk theme. The very important aspect of the game and gameplay itself is that you can connect with the computers all around. This includes looking directly through surveillance cameras and causing electric damage to robots. You can also steal money by hacking and attack people by causing damage to their implants. There are people who specialize in these kinds of things and they are called netrunners. This is a direct influence of the Gibson's book Neuromancer. In this book, computer hackers basically were called the same and did the same things like in the game. Although you are not playing a lot in it, a complete virtual world exists in Cyberpunk game, which is also according to the book Neuromancer. Side quests of the Cyberpunk 2077 also like to delve in the genre. One of my favorite questlines is Delamain Taxi Company. This quest explores the rise of AI, when artificial beings become self-aware on what they do. In the game, this turned out differently for each of them, as they all had different personalities. There were some comical, tragic and dark themes. I really like this approach, because every media tends to set AI in some frame of being evil or benevolent. The game approaches this as if each robot has its own mind. This is a brilliant concept in my opinion, because you can't exclude this possibility in real life. Of course, all of this is also according to Cyberpunk as a genre. When the game is approaching the end, it delves rather deeply into V's and Johnny's relationship. A lot of stuff comes up why Johnny is doing all the things he does. Johnny is the person of the past, and it breaks his heart to see that the corporation Arasaka against which he fought so fiercely is doing so well. Johnny has seen what the past was, so he can compare it to the present world of Cyberpunk 2077. He sees all the evil what has come up. We can't do this. But it is not just that. Johnny also has very personal reasons for defeating Arasaka. They killed his girlfriend, of course. Johnny is a very extreme character and he does many bad things, but there is some fundamental truth in what he says. This relationship between them represents the very important factor of Cyberpunk. It is not about the technology itself. It is about technology's impact on society. In conclusion, I would like to say that Cyberpunk 2077 definitely is Cyberpunk. Not just that, it is a very important representation of the genre, because the game is very popular, and probably many people got their first experience with the genre through this game. Despite all the bad reputation, Cyberpunk 2077 should go into history as one of the best pieces of this genre. Of course, game-breaking bugs can't be justified, but as I know, this is fixed now.